government spending obviously has been a big support on the capex side in particular. It's been a little difficult to understand, given that fiscal situation seems very comfortable going by the available numbers so far, as to why the government is sorry to use the word, but scrimping on other spends, particularly on MGNREGA. It's just been very difficult to understand why we didn't add money to that scheme when it was very clear that demand had remained strong this year.
No, MGNREGA demand actually has gone down, Ira.
If you notice, gone down, but it's still above pre-pandemic levels. It is still above pre-pandemic levels. If you look at month-on-month comparisons, it's still higher. And the money is out. I mean, the entire pool of allocation to MGNREGA has been used up. Why would the government, when it has the fiscal space, not give money to that very important sort of social support?
Okay, so I think, first of all, MGNREGA, clearly there is a commitment to, how much ever work is demanded will be provided for. Number one. So I think let's get that out of the way. Now to your...
Sorry to interrupt, but I think if you speak to people who are involved with the scheme, they'll always tell you that when money starts to run low, the work provided starts to go off. There are longer delays in payments. My question is actually just that when the fiscal space is available, what's the reluctance?
Okay, so I think that and that's a very important point. And this really, in fact, distinguishes India now during this crisis vis-a-vis how India was following the global financial crisis. It's very important to understand this very clearly. If you see, let me first tell you the outcomes and then tell you what, why this is important. Look at countries like Turkey, Brazil, Mexico. All these countries are actually now experiencing close to 20% inflation. The United States has had an inflation print that is at a 30-year high. During the global financial crisis as well, India had inflation that was every month, in double digits for 18 months, with the high being 70%. Now, ask the question, why did that happen? It's textbook macroeconomics, which is if you only, do the Keynesian prescription of actually just providing for revenue expenditure, you increase demand, and that then creates, significant inflation. If on the one hand, you've actually had inflation at 4.5%, and thereby being, within range, and yet there are people basically who are talking about some commodities actually where prices have increased, but on average, inflation has been at 4.5% CPI inflation. Think about what would have happened if you actually had far more demand. I think this is basic macroeconomics, right?
And allow me to explain that. Push back on this one. We are talking about large fiscal cash transfers in some of those economies. We are not talking about that here. We are talking about a scheme which at times of stress provides a little bit of support to the rural economy, which last year had been given a strong budget. This year, okay, you start with a lower budget, but as it becomes clearer that you may need, why is the government holding back? I mean, this is not, cash transfers to all of India, which is going to generate inflationary demand.
No, wait. I think, Ira, you understand economics, far better to actually make those kind of arguments. Let me be very clear. So see, first of all, I think when you have in-kind transfers, if you look at basically the Garib Kalyan Yojana, more than 800 million people have been given free food. And what happens actually, if you are not spending on food, then the money that is given will get spent on other things. Actually, it will have an impact on demand. It is fungible. Let's not forget that. And that is why I mentioned that, far more economics to actually ignore that aspect. Second, I think it is.
I'm talking about quantums. I'm talking about quantums. I'm not saying it won't impact demand, but that is the demand we need. We're not sending checks for all Indians who are going to be spending. I'm just questioning whether a little bit of budget to MGNREGA would be inflationary, or rather would it be supportive to demand of the economy when, there are concerns about some segments and income segments having that ability to spend.
I think, again, look at the data. The rural economy, actually, if you look at all the indicators, is not a problem. And that is why, again, I think you are barking at the wrong tree here. It is actually, if anything, it is on the urban side where, there is an issue. And we've talked about this before, where, to provide the demand stimulus, we have actually used the, guarantees together with lending by microfinance institutions. Why has that been the case? Because, the problem is on the urban side where, and we've discussed this, that if you provide a loan with a credit guarantee, that actually leads to much more targeted, intervention. So I think, let me be very clear, make it very clear, that, the problem is not on the rural side. Therefore, your question about MGNREGA is actually misplaced, number one. The problem is on the urban side, which is why we actually did use the microfinance institutions with the credit guarantee, so that, it goes to those that are genuinely distressed and not those that are actually not distressed. And here, let me use the example again. We've learned from previous mistakes. What happened after the global financial crisis? The two most important items of spending. And they were, 85,000 crores in the loan waiver scheme, which actually, I have a paper showing it. The CAG also has said it was actually shambolically implemented, and money just ended up being cornered by those that already had, enough with them. The second was pay commission recommendations. And as a result, what did you get? You had demand push. So you got a short spurt in GDP growth. But then monetary policy had to respond, because monetary policy, even without inflation targeting framework, they had to actually take care of inflation. So you had series of rate hikes. As a result, whatever demand push was given by fiscal policy, monetary policy undid that. And so when you think in a dynamic scenario, you have to take this into account. Real world is not static. So if you actually just give far more push to demand, you will have monetary policy not being supportive. Right now, because of the way India has done, and I think this is something that I must highlight, India has been different from the rest of the world, emerging countries as well, on both demand and supply side. And while we've done supply side, demand side, we've done three things primarily. Food, as I said, which is actually essentials, which none of the other countries have a public distribution system. We've given cash transfers, but to widows and women, as part of Jan Dhan accounts. And third, we've actually given loans with credit guarantees, which actually leads to much more, calibrated and well-directed spending. So we have to keep in mind that fiscal space entering the pandemic was much lower, so it had to be spent very prudently, which is what we have done. As a result, now India actually, with very good macro fundamentals, current account, fisc, and inflation and growth that actually is much higher, highest among emerging economies. So that tells you how policy has been clearly very, very prudent. Otherwise these outcomes are not accidents.